That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Cult Killer, the, I think, 14th film directed by Jon Keeyes, which Saban Films is releasing January 19th, 2024.
Do you know a Jon Keeyes film?
No, but his film from last year also starred Antonio Banderas and somebody else from this cast, Kim DeLonge, called Code Name Banshee.
Cult Killer. When a renowned private investigator is murdered, his protege takes on the case. As her investigation unfolds, she is forced into a dangerous alliance with his killer to uncover the town's grisly secrets and bring justice to its victims.
The town being Dublin?
This sounds much more epic than it is. What's your pull quote?
A much tighter, focused script could have made Cult Killer a fascinating portrait of two women trauma bonding on opposite sides of the law. Unfortunately, the only one who realized the potential was Alice Eve.
Mine. For a film called Cult Killer, there isn't much of a cult or very many killings. Yeah, I agree.
There's some interesting things once we get to the meat of it, and it reminded me of, something like Copycat, where we have, two female leads working together to, get the bad guy.
This movie feels like it could have been two different movies, and I think maybe it also feels like the original screenplay had to be adjusted maybe once Antonio Banderas got on board, so they had to make his part meatier, maybe?
Or maybe his name got the financing.
Maybe. It just feels disjointed. But the story is that, spoilers, obviously, there's a woman named Jamie who was sex trafficked and was basically like a sex slave for this older couple named, the woman's name is Dottie.
Dottie and Edgar.
So we see that this older couple who have money, I guess they're the cult because they traffic and enslave these women and have these sex parties. We don't see any of this, we're just told. And Jamie is one who got away. And it seems, or it's clear, that she's trying to get revenge by killing off everyone involved one by one. So she has killed someone off screen, and we see that has initiated an investigation in the town they're in, which is Dublin. So the police department's working on that when they bring on a private investigator, like a special investigator, played by a character named Cassie.
Cassie Holt. Alice Eve.
And there's an entire subplot that takes up a third of the movie that I'll get to, but Cassie starts working on this case, and she ends up connecting with the killer, Jamie. They're, like you said, trauma bonding because Cassie is also the victim of sexual abuse. So she's trying to investigate the murders and stop Jamie from killing more people. But Jamie kills another person off screen. She actually kills Antonio Banderas' character by accident because she thinks he's part of the cult. And then the married couple, the ones responsible, she ends up attacking Edgar, the man, first, and then he dies as a result of his injuries. But then the woman ends up kidnapping Jamie. Dottie kidnaps Jamie.
Which is good old Olwen Fuere, who we just saw in the movie Sunrise.
So then the final scene is Dottie holding Jamie captive in like one of her torture rooms, but Jamie's able to get the upper hand, kills Dottie by biting her in the neck, and then Cassie shows up. And Cassie's like, well, we can figure this out, everything's gonna be okay. And Jamie's like, bitch, I'm going to jail, I killed a bunch of people. And also, I'm like traumatized by all this. I'll never be a normal person. Just put me out of my misery. So Cassie kills Jamie. The end. But the major subplot is we find out Cassie is just an alcoholic librarian. So how does she become a private investigator? I guess there's like a promising young woman vibe because she would hang out at this bar and like seduce men.
I just thought of the lyrics to American Life.
Which are?
When she goes into a bar looking for sympathy,
yeah,
little company.
So Cassie used to go to this bar and like pick up men to then like bounce on them once they're ready to leave. It was all very ambiguous to me. But Antonio Banderas was frequenting that bar, noticed her, and then confronted her like, "You're clearly an alcoholic. I can sponsor you." So he helps her get sober, and then he trains her to be a PI.
And then gives her half shares in his...
And gives her his
business.
PI business, but then he gets killed. So then the Dublin homicide division hires Cassie to work on the case. So that's how she worked her way into that. But yeah, this story feels so busy.
It doesn't need to feel that busy. I think the whole Antonio Banderas stuff could really be cut out of it.
We don't need an ounce of it.
No.
At all.
And again, this is another film that depends heavily on flashbacks to two different periods.
Well, actually 3, because we get a bunch of flashbacks of Antonio Banderas and Cassie, like working on her sobriety and then training her to be a PI. But then he's really just training her how to use a gun because she can fight. She learned how to fight because second set of flashbacks are her being molested by her grandfather, which just amounts to her lying in bed as a little girl, and then you see a man's hand touch her shoulder. So she learned jujitsu so that one day she can defend herself against him. We also get flashbacks of Jamie being held as a sex slave, which amounts to her in this padded room, naked, handcuffed to a wall.
Those are a little less frequent.
Sure. But I don't quite understand.
And Jamie's played by Shelley Hennig.
And who plays Cassie?
Cassie's Alice Eve.
So, Cassie learning how to be a PI by using a gun, basically, because she already knows how to fight. And then we found out that she has a degree in, like, information studies. So, like a librarian. Mm-hmm. And then she says, "I'm really good at researching," like, literally. We also get a scene of her hacking.
That scene... I mean, Alice Eve is cute and sweet in a way kind of makes that scene work, but I mean, it's not good.
I just think the premise of this busty blonde alcoholic librarian just feels so weird, even though she is charming. Antonio Banderas is very charming.
I almost want to see the slapstick comedy of his Girl Friday version of this.
Well, I thought, so one movie could have just been this. I was thinking the Michael Fassbender character in The Killer. What if, like, he meets a lady, so, like, Antonio Banderas meets this woman, and then she gets to understand what he does for a living, and then she says, "I want to learn how to neutralize this person who abused me as a kid." And then the story builds up to that moment, and maybe there are complications to that. I felt like that could have been an entire movie, but the better movie would have been what you said in your pull quote, which is these two women, one who works in law enforcement, like maybe she is a homicide detective, not this special investigator, alcoholic librarian. And then the other woman was the one who was sex trafficked and she's on a revenge plot, and how they connect and help each other. Like, I was waiting for the movie to turn into that, but we never quite get that.
No, and it has elements of like, oh, this woman coming back to destroy these people that did terrible sadistic things. It felt very Martyrs to me. But Shelley Hennig, whose performance is fine, but the script, when it comes to her characters, feels very overwrought specifically, and almost exploitational. And I feel like we needed her to be somebody along the lines of a Noomi Rapace from Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yes, because the way she's played here, it's almost like she belonged in like an action film.
She's like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, busting up in here.
So the tone of her character I felt was off. The timing, so because there are so many flashbacks, and then we see that from the time Antonio met Cassie to when he's killed, there's like a 5-year period. So there's like a lot happening in this 5-year window, but then we get flashbacks prior to the 5 years for her, plus all of the training with Antonio, and then also referencing Jamie and her time spent being held captive. So it just felt like there was a lot. That's all I kept thinking as I was watching this. There's so much happening.
There is. I did think that, again, I feel like Alice Eve has some comedy chops in her that maybe haven't been explored. And because in the opening moments which I don't think are well orchestrated, but she was giving me Anna Nicole Smith. Like, she could play Anna Nicole Smith.
She could. But that opening scene was confusing because I don't understand because the reason Antonio Banderas is at that same bar is because he's serving papers to
somebody else.
To like to someone, like court papers. But the bartender is talking too much to him and saying like, oh, you see the lady over there? She comes here every night. And she basically like gets drunk with these men, gets them all riled up, and then right when they're ready to like score, she leaves. But I let her do it because she tips really well because she's using other people's money. So then we see her get these 3 men drunk and then they're ready to like leave with her. And she says, oh, I'm not going anywhere with you. And then she taunts them.
So if you try to follow me, you're going to get messed up.
I didn't understand what that was all about at all. And then we see that they follow her to the back of the bar, like outside. And it looks like they're going to fight her. And that's when Antonio steps in and...
Well, she's got one of them in a headlock.
Yeah, she can defend herself, but he also helps her. And then that's when he says, like, clearly you're drunk. Let me help you. I don't understand what why she was doing that.
Well, again, I think if we had properly, psychologized and characterized both of these women, it's like their structure is there to maybe potentially get into that, but we never do because we have so many other distractions.
Like, it's obvious that she was, she's the victim of abuse from when she was younger and maybe has these feelings towards men and maybe wants, like, this is how she's acting out, like, revenge and anger. But it just seems like it's so simplified.
Well, it is because it's like, it is complicated. There's this revenge factor, of course, and also the sexual, physical needs factor that is always going to be a part of it.
Also, the writing of how law enforcement works, and I just thought was really weak because we meet this one detective, the redhead guy.
Mm-hmm. Rory.
And it's like, he seemed like it was his first day on the job, and then so we meet the attorney for the pervy old couple.
Victor. Mm-hmm.
And he shows up mad, like, I'm tired of you harassing my clients. They didn't do anything. Like, you need to be investigating the murder of one of their associates. And then he's like, well, Antonio's dead now. So the attorney's like, great, so you can drop the case. Why would I drop a murder case because a detective died? So then he's like, no, actually...
The opposite's true.
Yeah. This lady right here is going to take over. And I'm like, how does that work? And then he makes her sign a paper saying she'll be the special investigator. Then they go visit the attorney's house.
That scene is so weird too because we get into like the administrative portion of
we
need a witness to
we need a notary to come in. It was so weird. Then they show up at the mansion of the attorney, the solicitor, and there's security there. And this detective with Cassie show up like, I need to go in the house. And security's like, you can't come in without a warrant. And he immediately pulls his gun on them.
Yeah, that was an odd...
I don't understand how that works. And then, of course, they do end up entering the house. And then there's a confrontation with the attorney.
Did the house give you Saltburn Mansion vibes?
It did. It did. But then after that scene, Cassie gets a call from Jamie, the killer. The one who's plucking off everyone one by one.
Because she stole Banderas' phone.
And we get this really awkward scene with like a split screen where they're both on the phone like teenage girls sharing their sexual abuse tales, which I think could have worked well, but because Jamie is acting like she's on like a WB sitcom, and then Cassie seems more sincere.
Cassie's sincere, but could veer into Giallo territory real quick.
Yes. This is when it's also during the scene where we discover this hidden padded room. And I thought this was also a really weak portion of the story because if this is a cult, it seems real tiny because all we see is the creepy older couple who seem like they're brother and sister. They tell us that clearly these people are effed up, but we're told that they met as children. Mm-hmm. And
the whole group is basically childhood friends that have grown up together, all rapey. It's very Jeff Epstein. And the one woman working for them, running interference, whose name is Wallace, Kim DeLonghi, very much Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah. And that character, yeah, she was confusing to me too, because I feel like the mystery portion or the procedural portion of this story is not handled very well in how they piece together everything, because it feels like everything is just laid out on a platter for the audience immediately.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this creepy couple, they have sex slaves. Oh, one of them escaped. She's the killer. We learned that right away. I mean, the only thing that was kind of interesting that is not expounded on is because we hear, because Dottie, the creepy older lady, she's the one who seems to have the biggest appetite for these women. And that's kind of just brushed over, like what she wants to do with them. But then she's like, I'm getting bored. I need someone new.
She says that several times. I'm so bored. We need something to play with.
Oh, that dialogue was crunchy.
Yeah.
But then we find out from the one lady, the one running interference, that, oh, when they get bored with the women, they don't kill them. They just send them off.
They sell them to the Russians.
They sell them to Russia. Like, okay. For a topic like this, I feel like we needed to give it a little more time because it just feels so silly and reckless.
It does, yeah. Because I think we really should feel something. There should be some kind of catharsis amidst all this violence for the Jamie character.
Well, speaking of Jamie and being reckless, like, she just seems like she's out. Like, there doesn't seem to be any method to how she's killing. She's just trying to get everyone, because at a point we see that she's killed a second person. We don't see the killing, but we see the decapitated body. And then while the investigators are at the house, while Jamie's on the phone with Cassie, she drops the head of the person she killed down the chimney. And then she's running from the house like, do you want to get caught? I was confused what Jamie's function was. Like, are you trying to get revenge and get away? Or are you trying to send a message and get caught? Like, I
think she was just trying to kill all of these people. Is the essence of her motivation.
I wish it was more methodical so that there was some, because there's zero suspense, I thought.
There is no suspense. And also, Cassie is told a couple times, well, that's, Jamie immediately picks up on, like, you and me, we're similar. It's like, okay, because you're both broken women. Okay. And then later on, I think it's in a conversation with Rory, Alice Eve says something. She's like, well, I don't know how much you know about my background. And he says to her, like, well, I can tell there's signs.
That was clunky.
That was clunky. I felt she navigated that well. Now she's like, oh, like, she seems crestfallen, like, oh, there are signs. But we don't ever see any signs of, I don't know. Like, if you plop me into the middle of this movie without knowing anything, that's not something I would immediately pick up on about this presentation of this woman.
I thought the Dottie character could have been fun, like this demented, perverted, murderous lady. But her dialogue, because her dialogue's over the top. There's a point when she captures Jamie and she calls Cassie and she says, I've got your bitch. What?
It's too caricatured, it's too cartoonish. Not unlike Guy Pearce in that movie Sunrise, starring opposite her.
So somehow, Jamie is just... First of all, I don't know why Dottie and her man, what's his name, Edgar, the heat is on them. There's a full-blown investigation against these two dummies, and they're just walking the streets of Dublin trying to find a cute place to grab brunch, and that's when Jamie runs up on them and, like, stabs Edgar while Dottie just stands there. But then when Jamie turns to go attack Dottie, Dottie hits her with mace. And somehow this lady gets the upper hand, drags her to her Bentley.
In the back of a car, there's no one.
There isn't a single soul.
I don't know where they were going to find a restaurant. It seems to be a derelict city. And then Dottie's dialogue in that moment too is like, I want to go out to eat because I don't want to do dishes.
Aren't you, like, super rich? Do you cook anything?
I don't think you're doing dishes.
That was so odd. Then when we find out that the Dottie and Edgar have all the girls who they have enslaved sterilized, so they don't have to worry about them getting pregnant, which is such an interesting, creepy, like, thing to bring up. Like, I just feel like these women who were trapped in this situation deserve more time.
Yes, it's like if we could have cut out the first 45 minutes of this movie and deal with these two women and, pursuing this cult and maybe trying to find the doctor that was sterilizing these women. I don't know.
Then we find out that Dottie, part of the game she played with Jamie at least, was that she wanted her to like treat her like a mother figure. And we hear Dottie's telling Jamie, like, I'll stop, because she has her in her torture room locked up, and she's like, I'll end all of this if you tell me what those 4 words I want to hear. And the 4 words are, I love you, mommy. And it's like, God, this lady's demented. She could have been such an interesting character.
Right.
I don't have anything else except that
Except that it opened with a quote from Genghis Khan.
That's right.
What?
I know. I like Antonio Banderas, but I don't think we needed a single second of him in this movie.
I don't think so either. And I haven't seen his previous work with this director, Name Banshee. But, Antonio just got an Oscar nod in 2019.
Maybe he's a producer on this?
I don't know. No, I didn't think I saw that, but
I don't think I would even enjoy this there's not enough to it. Like on an airplane, I think I would have been bored.
No, but I was intrigued because of the 2 people on the poster.
What would you give Cult Killer?
2.
I would give it 2 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.